The woman you would die for has already calculated the exact moment she will cross your boundaries. When she inevitably does, there is one specific psychological lever you must pull at the end of this video that will permanently shift the balance of power back into your hands forever. Most men blindly walk into a slaughterhouse of their own making. They believe that communication solves everything. They sit down, they hash it out, they explain their feelings, and they expect logic to rebuild broken trust. But here is the brutal reality that society refuses to teach you. When you over-explain your pain to a woman who just betrayed you, you are not establishing boundaries. You are handing her a manual on how to manipulate your emotional state. And this is exactly where 99% of men lose their masculine frame. They morph into emotional negotiators. They beg for apologies. They demand explanations. They want to know the reasons behind the disrespect. But asking why is the ultimate posture of weakness. It tells her that you cannot process reality without her validation. It proves that she holds the keys to your internal kingdom. The moment she realizes that her bad behavior forces you to work harder for her attention, the relationship is entirely dead. She will lose every ounce of biological respect she ever had for you. Let me tell you what actually forces a human being to reckon with their own toxic nature. It is not anger. It is not a carefully crafted text message. It is the absolute terrifying void of your absence. Silence is not a passive action. It is the most violent psychological consequence you can inflict on someone who expects you to chase them. And this brings us to the core mechanism of human leverage. When a woman acts out of line, she expects a reaction. She expects the shouting, the paragraphs, the pleading. She has already built a psychological defense mechanism against your anger. She knows exactly how to deflect it, how to cry, how to play the victim, or how to turn it around on you. But she has absolutely no defense mechanism against absolute nothingness. When you completely withdraw your verbal and emotional energy, you strip her of her expected reality. You force her brain into a state of panic. She is left stranded on an island with nothing but the echo of her own terrible decisions. But the trap most guys fall into is completely misunderstood. They use the silent treatment as a childish tantrum. They pout. They ignore her but stomp around the house slamming doors. That is not strategic silence. That is just a noisy cry for help. True strategic silence is absolute detachment. It is the cold, unwavering realization that your words are a premium currency and she has just bankrupted her account. You do not look angry. You do not look sad. You look busy. You look utterly unbothered by her existence. This is where the true power dynamic flips. When you say nothing, her anxiety begins to write the script. Her imagination becomes your greatest weapon. She starts wondering if she pushed you too far. She starts wondering if you have other options. She starts realizing that you do not need her to survive. And this is the exact moment her biological respect for you begins to rebuild. Women do not respect men they can control. They respect men who cannot be moved by their emotional storms. Let us dive deeper into the evolutionary psychology of this phenomenon. For thousands of years, a man's value was tied to his stoicism under fire. A king does not negotiate with a thief who just stole from his treasury. He simply cuts off the thief's access to the castle. Your attention is the castle. Every time you explain how much she hurt you, you are inviting the thief back into the throne room to discuss the robbery. It is pathetic, it is weak, and it guarantees she will steal from you again. But this is the part where most men crack under the pressure. They cannot handle the silence themselves. They feel an overwhelming urge to fix the tension. They mistake the lack of conflict for a loss of connection. So they cave. After 2 days of quiet, they send the text. They ask if she is okay. They try to smooth things over. And in that exact millisecond, all of your masculine authority evaporates into thin air. You just taught her that your boundaries have a time limit. You taught her that she just has to wait you out and you will eventually come crawling back to clean up her mess. If you want to reclaim your dignity, you must become comfortable living in the uncomfortable void. You must learn to look at the woman who betrayed you with the dead, empty eyes of a stranger. When she tries to provoke a reaction, you give her nothing. When she tries to act like everything is normal, you give her nothing. When she finally breaks down and begs for your forgiveness, you do not immediately validate her. You let her sit in the agonizing fire of her own guilt. Guilt is the only catalyst for genuine behavioral change. If you rescue her from her guilt by comforting her, you are robbing her of the only lesson that matters. You are actively participating in your own disrespect. Let me give you a scenario that happens every single day. A man catches his girl crossing a line with another guy. His immediate reaction is to confront her. He lays out the evidence. He raises his voice. He thinks he is asserting dominance. She starts crying, makes up an excuse, and blames it on her insecurities. Within 3 hours, he is the one holding her on the couch, comforting her for feeling bad about betraying him. It is a psychological masterclass in manipulation. She transferred her guilt onto his shoulders, and he willingly carried it because he wanted the illusion of peace. He traded his absolute self-respect for a temporary quiet, and the second he did that, she mentally categorized him as a doormat. But what if he chose a different path? What if, upon discovering the betrayal, he simply packed his things, looked at her without a single trace of emotion, and walked out the door? What if he did not answer a single text or call for a week? The psychological devastation she would experience would be profound. She would not be able to manipulate the narrative because there is no narrative to manipulate. There is only the massive, suffocating vacuum of his absence. She is forced to face the raw, unfiltered reality of her own toxic actions. And this is the secret most dating coaches will never tell you. You cannot argue a woman into respecting you. You can only remove your presence until she realizes your worth. But taking this path requires a level of emotional discipline that most modern men completely lack. We live in a society that tells men to be vulnerable, to share their pain, to communicate endlessly. That is a trap designed to keep you weak and easily manageable. True masculine vulnerability is not crying about your feelings. It is having the courage to walk away from a bad deal without needing the other person to understand why. You do not owe anyone an explanation for your self-respect. You do not owe a betrayer a roadmap to your forgiveness. Let them wander in the dark. Let them question everything. Let them feel the heavy, crushing weight of your strategic consequence. This forces a recalibration of her entire reality. She thought she was the prize. She thought you were lucky to have her. But your silence shatters that illusion into a million pieces. It communicates, without a single syllable, that you are the prize. It says that your life is a moving train, and if she decides to derail, you will simply leave her stranded at the station while you continue toward your destiny. And this is the concept I promised you at the beginning, the psychological lever that changes everything. It is called the mirror void. When a person betrays you, they are expecting you to reflect their actions back to them through anger or sadness. The mirror void is when you refuse to reflect anything. You become an empty glass. You absorb nothing and you project nothing. When she looks at you for validation, she sees only a void. This completely breaks the narcissism of the betrayer. They need your reaction to feel significant. Even a negative reaction makes them feel powerful because it means they control your emotions. The mirror void denies them that power. It starves their ego to death. It makes them feel incredibly small, insignificant, and powerless. And that is exactly where they belong after crossing your boundaries. You must train yourself to become the mirror void. The next time you are disrespected, do not raise your voice. Do not type out a paragraph. Do not seek closure. Closure is a myth invented by weak people who cannot handle unresolved tension. You are your own closure. Your standards are your closure. Your silence is the final, undisputed verdict. Implement this and watch how quickly the world bends to your quiet, unshakable authority.